right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, you can post them. Should be below the video if you're on a smaller screen, or to the right of the video if you're on a larger screen, like a phone, or larger screen like a computer. Smaller screen would be a phone, where it'd be below the video. Also, wanted to mention, in case you are unaware, because I think a lot of people are unaware of this, that if you have a question, you can ask at any time. You don't have to wait for the live office hours, which is awesome because makes it to where you can ask your questions 24/7. Now, when you ask your question, it will be answered live during the next office hours. And if you happen to ask your question leading into the office hours, then it will be one of the first questions, if not the first question, to get answered. So the cool part about that is that you also don't have to be present at the live office hours to see the answer to your question. Although I do recommend that you do so, because if you have a follow-up question or something like that, you can ask it right away and get an answer to that. Now, obviously, if you have a follow-up question, you can ask it and get your answer the next day or whatever it might be. But if you are, everyone's busy, and if you're unable to get to the live office hours to see the answer to your question, you can watch the archived office hours after this session is over, or after any session. And you can access that by the green button that's below the video here. If you select that, it says something about the archive. I can't remember exactly what the wording is, but if you select that, that will bring you to the archive page, and you just select the office hours where your question got answered, and you'll be able to see it, and it'll be one of the first ones out there. So just wanted to mention that, because I know I think a lot of people don't ask questions because they feel like they have to be here live, and they also feel like they have to be here live to see the answer. That's just not the case. You can this is we do this the live thing, so that way you can answer follow-up questions, and maybe even have a little bit of a back and forth a little bit. But if you're just looking to get a question answered and you don't really have time for that, whatever it might be, you can ask your questions beforehand and get the answers afterwards. So just wanted to mention that before we get started here. Let me refresh this, see if we got any new questions in there. All right. Looks like we have one from Al. Says, I'm making good contact, but I'm pulling the ball left. How do I correct that? So let's talk about what causes a pull. So let me use, just use an alignment stick here. This makes it very simple, because I think that's really the first thing to understanding how to fix something, is understand, well, what's causing it, right? Because if we don't understand that, then we're kind of doing things blindly here. So if we imagine that this alignment stick here on the ground is pointed at my target, and ideally what I would have happen to hit the ball dead straight is I would have this club come down, and as it's approaching the stick, right, it'd be working from inside the stick, and then when it gets to the ball, it'd be turning the corner, and then once I hit the ball, it would start to work to the left of the stick, right? Well, if you're pulling the ball, what you're doing is that this club is working from outside the stick, and then it hit the ball, then it works to the inside of the stick. So my club path, which is, you can think of that as the right to left or left to right movement of the club head through impact. Some people call it in to out, out to in. But basically what's going on is your club is working from outside the stick to inside the stick through contact. And then your club face is also pointed in that same direction. So if you want to put numbers on it, you could say, if you were swinging, if you were kind of pulling the ball 5 degrees to the left, your club path would be 5 degrees out to in, and your face angle, which is the direction the club face is pointing at impact, would be 5 degrees closed. That would produce a ball flight that would start 5 degrees left and just go straight left. So the way that we correct that is to get the club path to be more neutral, to be closer to in to out. So what you can try at first is to just try to, if for a right-handed golfer, what I would try to feel like is that you're swinging way out to right field, right? So I'm just going to feel like I swing way out that way. Now, we wouldn't technically want to swing that far out there, but it's a feel, right? It's what we call the fault, feel, real approach. The fault is I'm swinging too much to the left, out to in. The feel is I want to feel like I swing too much into out, and hopefully the reality is that I kind of neutralize that. Now, the good part is that if you literally swing too much into out and you block it out to the right, well, that's great, because you've really been able to change and do the opposite of what you're doing. And now all you have to do is tone that down more toward a straight shot. Now, let's say you try, to swing way out the right field. You're exaggerating as much as you possibly can, and for the life of you, you just can't do it. Well, in that situation, I would recommend using a training aid or something like that to get you to be swinging more into out. So, what you can do is you could do the inside swing feature on the blue brick. So if you're not familiar with what this is a training aid that Clay invented. Lots of awesome drills you can do on this. There's actually 2 drills you can do with this to help with the poles. So one is the inside swing, and you don't have to have the blue brick. I just recommend it because it's an awesome tool. You can use it on mats. You don't have to. If you have actual turf that you can put alignment sticks into, you can just do that. But a lot of places we go, we're hitting off of mats, they're sitting on concrete. We can't put a stick into the concrete. So this comes in handy because this will hold the sticks for you. And it holds it at all the specific angles that we've, kind of engineered in here. So the first one I'll show you is the inside swing. So you'll see on here, it says inside swing. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to have to put it off frame to be able to show you. But what you're going to do is you're going to put the stick in there. You can see how it kind of holds it out like this. And it's going to go out of frame here, unfortunately, because I don't have the space to be able to show you. But what we're going to do is we're going to place that, and you can see that stick coming out there. And I'm just going to put this ball, I'm going to move this. I'm going to put this ball under the tip of that stick. So if I'm looking straight down, I want to see that ball right under the tip of that stick. Now, if you imagine, if I swing out to in it all, my club's going to come on that stick, right? So what I need to do is I need to come down and avoid hitting that stick, and that's going to get my club path to be into out. So point this stick at the direction of your target, set the ball there. And you may even want to start out without a ball and just get comfortable swinging underneath that, and then add the ball, and then try to hit it with swing underneath the stick. If you really feel like you're going to hit the stick, go slow, or try in a shorter and slower swing and build up the longer and faster swings. Now, if you feel confident, you're like, hey, I'm going to swing underneath this, no problem. I just needed to have something there to force me to do it. Then go ahead and do that. But there's nothing to be gained, by coming down and whacking down into that stick. So that's the first thing that you can do. And the goal would be, hey, I want to get this ball to kind of push out to the right. And then once I get a few of those in a row, then I can kind of tone that down to get a straighter shot. The other one that you could do is the shallowing drill. So let me show you on the brick here. Up here on this corner, we can see where it has shallowing on there. And there's some clubs listed. We have driver, 6-iron, and wedge. You can really use any club on this. I would just use the club that's closest to whatever is on here. So for the sand wedge setting, I would use all your wedges in that setting. So pitching wedge and all the other wedges. For the 6-iron setting, I would use basically anything from a 9-iron to hybrids, even like fairway woods. If you have like shorter fairway woods, like a 7-wood or a 9-wood or even a 5-wood, you could probably put in the 6-iron slot. And then for driver, I would use driver and 3-wood in that one. Those would be about the only clubs you're going to be able to use in that one. So what you're going to do is you're going to place this down. I'm going to put this, I have a wedge right here, so I'm going to put this in the wedge setting. And I'm going to take my alignment stick here. Now, normally there is a hole that's on this side of the blue brick that I put the stick into, but because my wall is here, it doesn't fit. So I'm just going to put it up against the brick, but it works the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start about 2 club head widths away from that stick. And I'm going to make sure that that stick is pointed at my target. And I just want to make sure that I swing underneath this stick. And that's going to help me to swing more and out. Now, I recommend 2 club head widths away starting out because, again, we don't want to be hitting the stick. So if you feel like you're going to hit the stick, you can move a little bit farther away from it. But ideally, you would, as you get better at it, you would move closer and closer to the stick until you're about, club head-ish away from the stick. And then if we're a club head away from the stick, you're basically ensuring that you're going to have a really hard time swinging out to in if you do that. You're basically going to be forced to swing in to out if you do that. So that's a great place to put it. Eventually get to. So get to where you can swing underneath this, and you'll be able to get rid of your pulse. But again, what you can do, you don't have to have this. I recommend that you have it because it's a great training. It's a great tool. If you're interested in getting one and you don't have one, you can go to the resources tab on the website. You should see a tab that says resources above on the screen somewhere. Select that. That will bring you to the page with all the stuff that we recommend, and you'll find the link for the blue brick there. I believe we have some in stock right now, so go check it out. But yeah, this is a great tool, and there's lots and lots of drills you can do with it. So if you have more questions about drills or anything, let me know, and I can demonstrate for sure. But that's what I would recommend doing if you're struggling with pulls. All right, let's keep it going. Let's keep it going here. If you got your questions, let's get them on here. What is today? 5th, 6th. Oh. Oh, let's see here. All right. So we got a question from Don here. Says, when working on shallowing, I sometimes hit behind the ball. Any insights for me? So this is actually very common because if you think about it this way, imagine I'm standing at home plate. Not sure if there's any baseball people on here, but imagine I'm standing at home plate. I got pitcher right in front of me here. I got first baseline. I got the third baseline. So imagine that I swing this club in the direction of third base. So I'm swinging way over the top. If you imagine like where my club is going to bottom out, right? My club comes down in an arc, it bottoms out and then starts to work back up, right? So when I swing in the direction of third base, my club is going to tend to bottom out more up here, more in front of my left foot. Now imagine the other side of that. Imagine I swing in the direction of first base. Where's my club going to bottom out? I'm going to bottom out more back here in front of my trail foot. So this is a big reason why a lot of people come over the top. Not the reason why everyone comes over the top, but it's part of the reason why a lot of people come over the top is because they don't really shift their weight to their lead side. And if I don't shift my weight to my lead side, I'm almost guaranteed to chunk it unless I come over the top. So what a lot of people do, well, they'll be on their back foot, they don't shift their weight, and then they swing over the top in an effort to make ground contact where the ball is. But the problem is I've had to hang back. I'm going to lose a lot of power and I'm going to come over the top. I'm going to have bad ball flight pulls and that sort of thing. So if you imagine if I hang back on my back foot and then I swing out to the right, well, I'm going to hit the ball. I'm going to hit the ground way behind the ball, way behind the ball. And that's more than likely what's happening with you. Now, it may not be as extreme as what I just demonstrated, but that's more than likely what's happening to you. So what we want to make sure of when we shallow up this club and we get this club working on a better plane instead of coming over the top, right? Because if you're pulling the ball, that means that you're coming over the top. So if you change your club path, you shallow out the club, which tends to get your club path more into out, you're going to tend to hit the ground a little bit sooner. So you need to make sure that you get a good weight shift to your lead side to make that happen. So a couple things that you can do to kind of get comfortable with this. So one is just to hit some shots where you have your weight on your lead side and you just kind of keep it there and get comfortable with having your body forward and swinging out to the right. Get comfortable with doing that. Now, this isn't the swing that you want to adopt necessarily because it's not going to be a very powerful swing. It's just a drill to help you get a feel of, hey, I want to get my body more forward and get more comfortable being there. So if I just kind of set up with my body forward and stay there, another good way to kind of do it is to almost have all your weight here and almost use your trail leg as a kickstand and really swing out to the right and, you know, get comfortable with having your weight on your lead side there. So that's a drill that you can do to help you with that. Another drill that you can do is something called the step drill. So that's where we start with our feet together. And you're not hitting a ball doing this. You're just getting the feel of getting a proper weight shift. And then you're going to translate this to a normal swing, a normal stance swing. So I'm going to start with my feet together. I'm going to start throwing this club back. As I throw the club back, I'm going to step forward. I'm going to land. And I'm going to come all the way around to a full finish where I'm completely posted up on my lead leg. All my weight is on my lead leg here. So get comfortable with doing that. And then do some practice swings where I'm going to replicate that same feeling where I shift to my right to start. I'm going to turn and I'm going to shift to my left to start the downswing. And then I'm going to turn through the shot. And I want to make sure that I'm swinging out to the right when I do that if I was suffering with the over the top before. Once you get comfortable with that, then add the golf ball. So really the short story is here, you just need to make sure that you're getting a really good weight shift to your lead side. So that way you can shift the bottom of your swing forward, because if you shallow out the club and swing from the inside and you stay on that back foot, you're going to tend to have a problem that you're talking about. So just make sure that you get that good weight shift to the lead side. Feel like when you come into contact when 100% of your weight's on that lead foot and that it stays on that lead foot all the way through and you're not hanging back on that trail foot at all. Right? All right. Keep the questions coming here. See if there's any new ones. All right, no new ones at the moment. Let's see here. So we can answer some questions from yesterday that I thought were pretty good. All right, so we have a question from Scott here. Scott says, "Hey Q, can you please explain the shallowing line that Clay talks about and how I can use it, how I can use the brick to work on it?" Sorry about that. Yeah, we could definitely do that. Let's get back to my screen here. All right, so what is the shallowing line? So first, what we need to be able to do is set up the camera correctly to be able to get an accurate shallowing line. So very simply, the shallowing line is the line that goes from the ball through the middle of the elbow. It's only really accurate if we have a good camera angle. What we want to make sure of is that when we're videoing our swing to evaluate how we're doing with the shallowing line, what we're going to do is we're going to set up that camera directly down the toe line. The easiest way to do that is to take an alignment stick, place it on the ground, point it at your target, and then get your camera lined up with that stick. All right. So the way you would kind of do that is just to make sure when you're looking on video that this stick is straight up and down vertical, not at an angle or anything like that. So if it's set up like this, right, that's not going to work. That's at an angle. We need to have it straight up and down vertical to really be able to evaluate this properly. Okay. The next thing is we want to make sure that the camera is at hip level. We don't want it too high or on the ground. You know, don't ask someone to hold the camera for you, because everyone's going to hold the camera like this. This is too high of an angle. We need to make sure that it's at hip level. So I recommend using a tripod and just holding it kind of at that level. So we're going to have it down the toe line. We're going to have it hip level. And then the last thing is you just want to make sure that you're far away enough to where you and the club stay in the frame throughout the entire swing. So this right here, this would be too close because my foot is cut off. When I go up to the top of the swing, the club gets cut off. Now, if the club barely goes out of frame for a split second, that's okay. But if it's going out of frame for a lot of it, you're going to have especially if you're working with an instructor, doing like swing reviews or something like that, the instructor needs to be able to see the club throughout the entire swing to be able to properly evaluate, what's going on there, because what the club is doing is the most important thing. And that's really, if we can't see what the club is doing, then it makes it very, very difficult. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. So again, down the toe line, hip level, far away enough to where you and the club stay in the frame. Then when you go to hit the ball, you just want to make sure that your toes are up there really close to that stick, within an inch or two of that stick, and equally distant from that stick. So you don't want to be set up like this. That's going to give you a bad camera angle. So you want to make sure that your toes are up there within an inch or two of that stick and equally distant from that. Once you have that, I would use an app like OnForm or something like that to video your swing. And it has line tools that you can draw the shallowing line on there. And again, that's a line that goes from the ball to the middle of the elbow. And then you can evaluate what's going on with that. So let me go over what I like to look for when I'm looking at the shallowing line and what I see in the best players. Now, first and foremost, all you really need to do to be able to hit a good golf shot is to get that club a little bit underneath that line at some point during the swing, right? If it's riding above it the whole time, that's going to tend to be over the top, steep. You're going to tend to have an out to in path. If you're too much underneath it, that you can tend to be too much into out, and you're going to tend to hit blocks and chunk it and thin it and things like that. So we want to get that club traveling just underneath it. And ideally, it would travel just underneath it for pretty much most of the way coming down. So what I like to look at is from the top of the swing to lead arm parallel. What I like to see is I like to see this club either parallel to that line or a little bit flatter in reference to that line. If you're very steep to that line, then you're usually going to need to do something like coming out of your posture a little bit to get that club to work underneath that line. So what that would look like is something like this. I go up to the top, I come down. Obviously, at this point in the swing, this would be much more vertical than that line. Well, if I just kind of continue down, I'm just going to be over the top. So what people will do is they'll kind of stand up out of it a little bit. You can see when I go like that, how that gets that club to work more underneath. And now I can have a functional golf swing. So I wouldn't get too, it's okay to have a little bit of that. It's when it's excessive. I think that people get a little bit too, nitpicky about that, where they're like, I have to maintain my backside line. I got to make sure I perfectly stay in my posture. There are top level professional golfers that do not perfectly stay in their posture. Jack Nicklaus, his backside moves off the line. If you look at Rory McIlroy, his backside moves off the line. If you look at Scotty Scheffler, his backside doesn't move off the line, but his upper body moves upward, right? So, obviously all those guys are elite level ball strikers, all time greats. So it's just proves that it's not crazy important. Now, if you're coming into contact and you're like that, that's one thing. I'm talking like when it's really, really excessive. Um, that's what that would be. But if you're coming, if you're, coming an inch or two off of that line and you're, hitting the ball great and you're just so worried about maintaining that tush line, it's not probably going to be something that's going to be that beneficial. It may not be something that you're physically capable of doing. We all come in many makeups and sizes and things like that. So just wanted to mention that because I know a lot of people I get a lot of people on my lessons that are really, really worried about that. And a lot of times it's just not that important of a thing. So hopefully that's good news to most people. But just want to mention that. So we want to get that club, if we can get that club parallel to that, or close to parallel to that, or even a little bit shallower to it, that's going to enable you to more likely be able to stay in your posture a little bit better. So if you are someone who's really standing up out of it, the first thing I would look at is how that club is coming down initially, because you're more than likely coming up out of your posture excessively to try to get that club to work into a good position. And I'll talk about how we can work with the blue brick to do that. And then by the time the hands get about hip level here, belt high, what I like to see at that point, I like to see that club underneath. That's what we see with the best players. By club parallel to the ground, I like to see that club either in line with the hands or a little bit inside the hands. Some of it may depend on the ball flight that you're going for. So if you're going for a fade, you might have the club a little bit more outside. If you're going for more of a draw, you might have a little bit more inside. That's going to help you to get the club path being in the direction that you need to. So that's what I look for with that. Now, how can you work with the blue brick to do that? It's very, very simple. I would just do the shallowing drills on the blue brick. So on here, you can see we got shallowing drills. I have a wedge here, so I'm going to put it in the wedge setting, but you can do shallowing drills with pretty much any club. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this down. I'm going to take the sticks that come with the blue brick. I'm going to put one in the wedge setting here. And what you're going to notice is how this stick is now at an angle. Well, this angle essentially represents that shallowing line. If you kind of look at it, you can kind of see how it basically goes. It may not be the best angle to kind of see this, but you can kind of see how it goes from the ball. That stick kind of lines up with my ball to the middle of my elbow. So it's essentially creating that line. So if I set this up, right, and I'll put my alignment stick here along the side of the brick. Now, normally I would put the stick in this hole that's kind of on the front side of the brick, and I'd point that toward the target. But my wall is here, so I don't have room to do that. So I just put it up against the side. But it serves the same purpose if I just put it up against the side, because that hole is basically right on the corner there. And if I set up with this ball about a club head inside of that stick, well, now if I make a swing, I have to get that club underneath there, and that's going to allow me to get that club working underneath that shallowing line at some point during the swing. Now, ideally, what would happen is when I get to this lead arm parallel position, and this is where you can really check it as a reference point, is we can do some swings where we go up to the top, and I'm going to pause, and I want to come down to lead arm parallel. I want to pause, and I want to make sure that club is a little bit flatter to that stick. Now, if you're someone who is really struggling with coming steep, you may want to feel like at this point that this club is like this. You may want to really exaggerate that. Now, what do I need to do to get that club in that position? What you're going to notice is my trail arm. The trail arm is typically the culprit. Between that and the spine angle is typically the culprit to coming down steep. So the spine angle, if my spine is very vertical or leaning toward the target, I'm almost going to be guaranteed to come down steep. It's very difficult to get the club to shallow out with your body vertical. So you almost want to imagine if I'm skipping a rock across the water, I'm going to have my body angled away so that way I can kind of release that rock to skip a rock across the water and release it kind of level, right? I want to have that same feel with my golf club. I want to feel like I'm coming in and I'm releasing that club almost like I'm throwing a ball level with the ground. So imagine if I was like this, it'd be very difficult for me to throw a ball level with the ground, right? I'm almost guaranteed to spike it into the ground, which would be kind of an over-the-top move. So a very simple way to find a good spine angle is to take your club, put it down the middle of your body here, get in your golf posture here, and then I'm just going to tilt my torso here until this touches the inside of my leg. Now I'm in a good spine angle position. I just want to make sure that I maintain that spine angle to the top of the swing. So that's the one of the number one things. The other thing is, as I mentioned, is this trail arm movement. What I see a lot of people do is when they get up to the top of the swing, this arm wants to go like that, right? So if I move as I start my downswing, if I move my elbow out away from my body, look what's going to happen. That club is almost going to guarantee to go that way. So the only way that I can get that club to work underneath here is to actually kind of tuck my elbow, get it to move in. So I need my arm to lower. I need from my shoulder joint here, I need it to externally rotate or stay externally rotated. Because when we go up to the top of the swing, I'm going to have my arm, externally rotated in my shoulder joint here. And I just want to kind of keep that for a little while as I'm coming down. Eventually, you're going to do this, right? But I want to make sure that I'm under that. And then I need to move my arm closer to my body. Now, you don't have to have it tucked in and cinched up against you, but we want to be moving it closer. So it's very, I go back to that rock throwing motion, that skipping the rock motion. It's pretty much the exact same, right? If I was going to skip a rock across the water, I'm going to take it back here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to lower my arm, right? I'm going to move it closer to my body. I'm going to lead with my elbow, which means I'm going to be externally rotating in my shoulder joint, which you can think of that as losing an arm wrestling contest, right? That's how I'm going to get in that position, and I'm going to release it out in front. So that's the feel that I want to have with my arm. So a good way you can kind of feel that is you can take the ball, right? And what I can do is I can just kind of throw it, right? I get my setup here, and then I can just kind of feel like I'm throwing that ball down the range. Then I can take the club here, and I can put it in my hand, and I just want to feel that same thing with the club, right? You can see when I'm doing that, how I'm getting my elbow to work in as I'm coming through. Then I'm going to put my other arm on the club, and I want to get that same feel, right, that I just had, and then I can add the ball and try to do it with the ball. So that's going to help you to get that movement of that trail arm in a better position. So this is how I would use the brick to work on, getting my club to be working down the shallowing line. Key checkpoints are going to be at lead arm parallel. We want to have that club either parallel to that or a little bit flatter to that. If you're struggling with coming down steeper to it, I would really try to exaggerate feeling flatter to that. And you can see what that does to my arm, right? And I would make sure that we have good spine angle. And then I'm using my trail arm properly, as I mentioned. If you do those exercises, you're more than likely going to be able to get the club shallowing out fairly easily with the blue brick here. If you're interested in a blue brick, I'm pretty sure we have some in stock. All you have to do is go to the resources tab at the top of the screen. Should see a tab that says resources. If you select that, that will bring you to our page with all the training aids and stuff that we recommend. You'll find the blue brick on there among many others. You select that and then pick one up. This is a great tool. I mean, this is not the only drill that you can do. We have lots and lots of drills that you can do, and we're coming up with new ones all the time. The brick has this little QR code on there. When you get your brick, it's also going to come with a card that has a QR code on it. You just scan that QR code. That's going to bring you to the page with all the drills that we recommend. Clay demonstrating those drills. That drill that I just went over with the shallowing, that's pretty much the bread and butter of this. I mean, I know there's many others drills that you can do, but that's basically the bread and butter of this thing. So definitely recommend checking this out. It's an awesome tool to help you with your golf game. All right, let's keep going here. See if we got any new questions. If not, no big deal at all. All right. All right, so no new questions at the moment. Like I mentioned, you can ask a question at any time. Um, all right, let's keep going then. Let's see here. All right, so Greg T says, is there any benefit to using a 10 finger grip? And do you know of any pros who use the 10 finger grip? So, um, the one pro that I know of, I'm sure there's more, but one that I know of that uses the 10 finger grip is Scott Piercy. He's a longtime PGA Tour veteran. Uh, obviously he plays pretty well with it. Uh, Really, the 10 finger grip, I generally recommend for people that tend to lack a little bit of strength. If the club is feeling really heavy to you, then you may want to consider a 10 finger grip. So, uh, you know, children that are just taking up golf, younger people, if you have arthritis and you really can't, put a lot of force into the grip, you may want to consider using a 10 finger grip. So the benefit of a 10 finger grip is you're going to be able to put more force into the handle because you have more kind of surface area of your hands, in contact with the grip. So if you imagine like your traditional grip where I'm interlocking, right? Well, these two fingers right here aren't really on the grip. And then if I have a Varden grip, then this finger isn't on the grip. So um, you know if you have a 10 finger grip, you're getting more surface area on there, and that can allow you to exert more force in the handle, and that is beneficial if you have trouble applying force into the handle. So that's why I would generally recommend it for you know people that maybe lack strength, like younger people, or if you're uh, have arthritis or something like that. But also, it can be a preference thing. Scott Piercy isn't someone who's lacking strength or anything like that. Nobody that plays on the PGA Tour is lacking strength. I mean, you have to have a good amount of strength to play on the PGA Tour because you better have some club head speed. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to catch up, right? You're going to hear that new Walmart joke that that they're building all the time if you're getting that. So it's just tough to compete if you're not hitting it close to 300 yards on tour, and you can't hit 300 yards without some good strength. So, like I said, it can be a preference thing. If you totally prefer a 10 finger grip and you get everything to happen the way that you want to with a 10 finger grip, who am I to tell you can't use that grip? You know what I mean? Now, generally, what I would say, if you're someone who has plenty of strength, the reason why we use an interlock or an overlap kind of grip is so that way the hands can work more together as one. And that's generally going to help you to control things a little bit more, control your strike, control your face, and control all those things that we want to do to be able to hit good golf shots. But like I said, if you control it really well with a 10 finger grip, and that is your preference, then that is totally fine. There are plenty of players that use 10 finger grips that could use an interlock grip or a Varden grip if they wanted to. I know Clay told me about a guy that he played college golf with that had a 10 finger grip and shot in the 60s all the time. So obviously you can play really good golf with it even if you don't lack the strength or anything like that. So So yeah, that's how I kind of look at the 10 finger grip. But the thing is the same, whether you're using an interlock, overlap, Varden, or a 10 finger grip. We want to make sure that we're doing certain things in the grip. It's really just about how the hands kind of go together. So I want to go over that real quickly. So when I'm holding the grip, what I want is the way that I look at it is I want to have it a little bit in the fingers and a little bit in the palm of the hand. So the way that I'm going to do that is if you imagine there is, I'll kind of take a pen here. So I took a pin and I marked kind of these creases on my hand. So you can see kind of at the base of the finger, there's those lines. So for the grip here, I want the club to go below the line on my pointer and above the line on my pinky. You can see how that gets it a little bit in my fingers and a little bit in my hand. If I have it both below the line like this, then it's too much in my fingers and I'm gonna have something called a long thumb. And with the long thumb, what tends to happen is this club is not going to tend to be as secure and it's going to want to move around in my hand. And then if I have it, let's say I have it both above, I have it all in my hand here and they're both above the line like this. Well, I might have, a good secure grip, but the problem is I'm not really going to be able to hinge the club up very much. This is as much as I can get the club to hinge up. So we want to have it to where it's a little bit in the fingers, a little bit in the hands. That gives me good grip security. My fingers can wrap totally around it. I have a nice short thumb there. You can see there's no space between my thumb and my hand there. So this club, I got great feel, and this club isn't going anywhere, and I can get some good hinge out of it, right? So that's what the lead hand, and that's whether you have a strong, weak, or neutral grip. The only difference is that if I have a stronger grip, that's just going to be more on top of the grip, right? If I have a weaker grip, it's going to be more on the side like this. If I have a neutral grip, it's going to be more it's going to be basically in between, right? So it might be better if I show you from this angle. So this would be like a weak grip. I would have my hand kind of more like this. If I have a neutral grip, it's going to be more like that. I'm still going below the pointer and above the pinky there. And if I have a stronger grip, it's going to be more like that. It's just how my hand is positioned, but still going through that on the grip there. Now with my trail hand, what we want to look at is we have these meaty parts of our hand, right? We have this thumb pad, and then we have this heel pad. These are kind of the meaty parts of your hand. If you squeeze those together, that creates a little bit of a crease. Now that crease, you want to put that either on top of your lead thumb or on the side of your lead thumb. Now, this is going to depend on what you struggle with club face wise. So I would say if you struggle with leaving the face open, I would put the thumb, or I would put the crease more on the side of the thumb, kind of more like that, right? If you struggle with getting the face too close, meaning you hit a lot of hooks, then you may want to have that crease kind of more on top of the thumb like that. So that's essentially what Rory does. Rory has kind of a stronger lead hand grip, and then his trail hand grip, he kind of has that on top, kind of like this. So I would say the majority of players are going to be better off, especially recreational amateur golfers are going to be better off having that on the side, because most golfers tend to leave the face open. And that's going to help you to get the club face more close. Because if you imagine if my hand's on top like this and I need to rotate that face down, well, that's as much as I can rotate it down, right? Well, now let me go back to square here. Now I'm going to get more under. Now I can get it so much more closed by doing that. So that's a big part of that. We need to have the ability to be able to close the face. So as long as you're following that, right, I can do that same thing and have a 10-finger grip. I can do that same thing and have an interlock grip, and I can have the same thing and do a Varden grip, right? So it's really personal preference as far as that is concerned. I like the interlock grip. I don't know why, but like a long time ago, I started out with the interlock grip, and then for some reason I decided I wanted to do a Varden grip, and then I moved to Florida and my hands are all sweaty all the time and I have a harder time holding onto the club. So I went back to the interlock grip because to me, it just feels more secure and I can hold on to the club much more easily. So that's why it's my preference. To me, it feels a lot better as well. I feel like I'm more consistent with the way that I grip the club if I'm interlocking versus overlapping. I feel like if I'm overlapping, this can be a little bit different all the time. Whereas if I'm interlocking, then it just feels like it stays the same all the time, and I'm very consistent with it. So that's the reason why I choose it. But again, it's personal preference. If you don't have an issue with the things that I talked about, then you just do whatever you want. As long as you're nailing the things that I talked about, how the club is in the hand and how the trail hand is kind of coming in and meeting with that. And the other thing I mentioned with the trail hand, I like to see the thumb close to the hand, because if we get that spreading apart a ton, I see a lot of people grip the club like this, right? Well, if you imagine if I do that, this club can move around everywhere. Whereas if I'm like this, now I'm in control of it because it's in my fingertips, right? So that's why that's the other thing we want to make sure that we're doing. So as long as we're nailing those things, we're getting this club to go through my hand like that. I have nice secure grip, a little bit in my fingers, a little bit in my hand, and then I'm meeting that up with my trail hand. Again, I want to have my thumb close together so I have a nice secure grip. Whether I have 10-finger interlock, whatever it is, all of it's going to be fine. It's mainly personal preference. And I would play around with it. Hit some shots with each one and see what you feel is like the best, and that will help you to choose the grip that works the best for you. All right, keep the questions coming. We got about 10 minutes left here. No worries if not. All right, we got about 10 minutes left if we have any more questions. If not, no big deal at all. Just want to take care of this really quick, guys. Thanks for being patient. All right, let's see here. All right, so we can talk about this question we had yesterday from Ron. It says this weekend, Scheffler's coach talked about the drills he had Scotty doing, which had given him a good understanding of where his club face is relative to his hand position. What drills would you recommend for this? Yeah, so you can do some start line drills. So start line is going to be very representative of your face angle. You know, at your face angle at impact. So what you can do is you can take an alignment stick, put it in the ground. So this would be like level 1. Put an alignment stick, put it in the ground about 10 feet in line with your target, from your ball to your target. And then if you imagine that, like that's set up like this, and I'm hitting a ball, imagine that's 10 feet in front of me. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to change my stance or anything. I'm going to keep my setup, and everything's going to be the exact same. My ball position, my grip, everything's going to be the exact same. I just need to make sure that when I come through contact, that this ball, I would alternate going between the two. So I would alternate going right of the stick, left of the stick, right of the stick, left of the stick. And doing this gives you a better overall feel and awareness for the club face, like Scotty's coach was talking about. So that'd be like level 1. And I would use a concept that's called win, pass, lose, stay with these drills. So what that means is if I'm successful, meaning that I win, then I pass and I move on to the next task. If I'm unsuccessful, meaning that I lose, then I need to make some sort of adjustment and then repeat the task. So let's say that I'm going right of the stick, left of the stick. And when I'm going for the left of the stick, it actually ends up going right of the stick. Well, that means I got to get the club face more closed to get it to go left of the stick. So again, I'm not changing my stance or anything like that. My setup is going to be the exact same, but the way that I come through contact has to be different. So I have to get that face more closed as I'm coming into contact to get that to go left of the stick, right? So that would be a kind of like a level 1 that you would want to do. And I would try to go exaggerate it, right? Get it to go way right, way left. Now, level 2 would be, now I'm going to get 3 sticks. All right. And I'm going to have them, I would kind of start out with them maybe like 6 inches apart, maybe a foot apart would be good. Let's do a foot. So this would be like level 2, where I'm going to go right and left of the stick. Again, these are going to be about 10 feet in front of me, but I can't go extreme right. So before I could just go extreme right, I can get that ball to go 10 feet right of that stick, right? And 10 feet left of the stick. So now I can't go extreme. I have to be a little bit more, precise with how open and closed my face is. So the first one, I'm going to try to get it to go between these sticks. I'm going to go between those sticks. And again, I'm going to do win, pass, lose, stay. Let's say I got to get 3 of each. I got to get 3 going through that one, 3 going through that one. And I'm going to count the total number of reps that it takes me. So if I'm going for the right stick and it goes to right of the stick or left of that stick, then I'm not going to count that, right? That's going to be a failure. I got to make an adjustment and try again. So what I do is if you get 6 out of 6 on this, I got to make it more difficult. I'm going to move this in to where now I'm more like 6 inches apart, right? And I'm going to keep working through that. And you keep working through it until, you get these things to where they're super tight, right? And again, I would have it to where you're not actually hitting the sticks. I would kind of, I would probably have them laid down a little bit, but you're kind of looking to see as the ball's going by, is it going between those sticks, right? So that would be a good way to do it. If you have a launch monitor, you can, do it by degrees. Say, hey, this one has to start a half a degree to the right, this one a half a degree to the left. You can say there's a range or something like that. But cool, you don't have to have a launch monitor to do this. You just set up sticks and hit it through the sticks. So that's one. You can get this to where you're making no failures and you're getting through these small little holes. You're going to have some amazing face control. But again, you got to start at level 1 and kind of work your way up to that point. Another one that you can do, and this one is more tied to kind of like what you were saying, the hands in relationship to the club face. This one's a really good one for that. So what I would do is I would set up 2 sticks where you're just trying to hit it straight. And I would set them up maybe just like a foot apart to start with, and about 10 feet in front of you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that win, pass, lose, stay again. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a weak grip, a strong grip, and then I'm going to do a neutral grip. The only thing that I'm changing is my grip, but I have to get the ball to fly between, the start line has to be between there. All right. So the first one, let's say I do a weak grip and I miss it to the right. Well, I know, hey, I need to get the face more closed with this weak grip. So I'm gonna do another rep where I focus on getting that face closed. The other thing with doing drills like this, where you have to make an adjustment, where you fail and then you got to make an adjustment on the next one. I wouldn't actually make another attempt until you feel like you're going to correct it. I find that a lot of people, when they do these drills, they just try again and there's no real thinking about what they're doing. They just like, oh, I'll just try again. And, they end up kind of doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. That's like the Einstein's definition of insanity, right? So we don't want to do that. So, imagine I use the weak grip. I hit this shot, it goes right to that stick. I want to know, okay, well, my face was too open there, right? So I'm going to make practice swings feeling like my face is more closed when I'm coming through. And I'm not going to attempt to hit this ball until I feel like I'm getting the feel of the face being closed enough that I'm going to get it to go through there. So let's say I make another attempt and I overclose it. I get to go left of this stick. Well, then I know I just overdid it a little bit. So now I'm going to make practice swings where I'm kind of doing something in between where I'm doing it. Let's say on the next rep, I get it to go through there. So now I'm going to go to the strong grip. It's going to be a big difference going from the weak to the strong because your hands, in orientation with the face. So here, if I have a weak grip, the back of my hand is basically matched up with the face. And then if I have a strong grip where I'm like this, well, now the back of my hand's kind of perpendicular to the face. So it's very, very different how the club is coming through contact. So it really helps you to get a good feel for the hand and club face relationship. So again, I'm just going to go through that. And if I can get 3 out of 3 on this, where I go weak, strong, and neutral, and I get it to go through this foot wide gap, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make that gap smaller. Right? I'm going to go a 6-inch gap, 10 feet up in front of me. And now I'm going to do the drill again. And maybe some of those ones that were kind of just barely, getting really close to the outer skirts of the stick before, those are going to be failures now, right? So I got to get that go through there. And if I can get to where I can get this really nice and tight, I get to where these things are like 3 inches apart and I'm able to get that ball to fly straight through there, changing my grip and if I can get 3 out of 3 on that, I'm going to have excellent control, club face control. I'm going to have an excellent awareness of my hand and my club face relationship. It's going to really help me to be able to control my start line much more easily. So those would be a couple drills that you can do. I don't know that those were the drills that Scotty's coach had him doing, but these are drills that I know are really, really good for that. These are actually drills that are in the ball striking masterclass. If you're not familiar with what that is basically a skill acquisition course where you are working on developing your ability to control your club face, control your strike, control your ball flight, all that stuff. If you're interested in that course, we do offer it, every several months or so. So just be on the lookout in your email for an opportunity to sign up for it. It is an online course, so you don't have to be present in Florida or anything like that to do it. But be on the lookout for that if you're interested in doing something like that. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you next time.